Hello, and welcome. In this series, we'll answer a burning question I've always had. What if a Minecraft world was played since the very first update? A forever world should at least attempt to be all-encapsulating. To that end, I shed my decade-long survival world, rife with Proustian involuntary memories, for what's possible beyond. All the while, I'll document my thinking and the processes I use, so anyone else can join in on this playstyle, which for now I will as shorthand call a provenance world. We'll leverage our early start date to collect blocks, items, mobs, terrain, and builds that wouldn't otherwise be possible with what are called unobtainables and discontinued features. At the same time, we'll incorporate cultural artifacts contemporary to each update and experiment on our own. As new terrain generators stack upon each other, we'll further create what is known as a polyworld, perhaps most encapsulating the title of this series, Minecraft, A History in Chunks. Thus is our mission statement. Where chunk borders stratify extinct terrain, we choose to see them not as eyesores, but as grand geologic formations. When farms fossilize in obsolescence, we'll make an exhibit of them, and carefully curate relics of bygone eras. If you have any ideas for rules, challenges, unobtainables, or anything tied to a specific version, leave a comment. With that out of the way, let's dive in for some history, and then I'll show off what I've built in this first version. In choosing a neat start for the story of Minecraft, I've chosen to leave out a lot of Notch's personal details and earlier game development, though the YouTuber Orange does an excellent deep dive here going back to 2003 if you're interested. I'll instead focus attention to the inspirations listed in a Tumblr post to the Word of Notch, which was functionally the game's devlog up until release. Titled The Origins of Minecraft, Notch describes an old prototype he found for a game of his called Rubydung.
Och då tänkte jag, originalplanen var att göra ett spel som var någon slags blandning mellan Dwarf Fortress, som är ett ganska smalt spel som är ganska roligt, och Rollercoaster Tycoon. Så att ha lite real-time strategy, samla resurser, hugga ner träd, bygga kojor och sånt.
Though when he had tried to add a kind of possess spell, where you could temporarily look at your constructions in first person, the low-resolution textures he used made the game appear blurry, and the idea was shelved. That is until he discovers Zachtronics' Infiniminer, a competitive block-based construction and excavation game. Players compete to make the most money by mining ore from procedurally generated caves and carting it back to the surface. However, many of its players were far more interested in the building aspect than the competition. One such player was Notch, who thoroughly enjoyed the multiplayer, but ultimately saw the game as flawed. It lacked variety, and had pretty horrible textures for the big red and blue team-colored blocks. He nonetheless realized that Infiniminer was the game he wanted to do, and that the low-resolution textures, which became pixelated rather than blurry in first person, solved Rubydung's first-person problem. So off he embarked on May 10th, 2009, to create a fantasy game in that style, reusing the existing Rubydung project. By the 13th, the video titled Cave Game Tech Test was published to Notch's YouTube channel, and shortly thereafter to his blog and to the Independent Game Source Forum, or TIG Source, which he'd only recently joined. In this first proven version of Minecraft, the world is pockmarked with holes, though the player cannot place or break blocks yet. Technically, calling these early versions of Minecraft is anachronistic, and not just for their lack of, well, mining and crafting. It would be another day before the name Minecraft, Order of the Stone, was chosen, as a nod to World of Warcraft, and eventually shortened to just Minecraft before the end of Pre-Classic. Now Notch admits to having lost the files for this and all prior versions, which have only IRC logs as proof of their existence, but we're in luck as it shares many features with the next to come, whose jar file is also conveniently unobfuscated, allowing a clearer look into how the game works. The game is the same 256 by 64 by 256 map that we'll become very familiar with before we're in InfDev. Each position is stored as either a 0 or a 1, not existing or existing. The latter blocks can have one of two textures, grass or rock, which owe their art to Rubydung, and are stored in a texture atlas titled terrain.png. As for how the different textures were chosen, it seems grass appears on fully lit tiles in the top 7 layers of the map, and everywhere else is rock. Lighting likewise has 2 levels, bright or dark. Sunlight is emitted from the top of the world and hits any block under it regardless of distance. If a block does not receive that light, it is in constant shadow regardless of distance, with a black fog applied when viewed from afar. But today we find ourselves in the first archived version, which for simplicity we'll consider the first version. Pre-Classic RD132211. The version names of Pre-Classic follow an ID Day Hour Minute format. Reusing the Rubydung project, the ID is thus RD, and the numbers date the original compilation to the 13th at 22:11 Central European Time. It wasn't originally released by Notch, nor were any versions before 0011A, all of whom had their jars last modified August 6th of 2013, when added alongside other historical versions to the Minecraft launcher. With the Cave Game tech test video a few hours earlier, and then the third version an hour and 17 minutes after this one, Notch must have been busy on this Wednesday night. Level generation now resembles a super flat world with no caves. Blocks generate from Y0 to Y43. Any block on Y43 always having the texture for grass, otherwise rock. The same 2/3 of world depth calculation is done both to generate the world and to apply the textures. We won't have sound until 0022A05, which is some 20 or so versions away by my plans, but I've taken some liberties to add music and sounds to break up the monotony. Players can now place blocks with left click and destroy with right click, a reversal which definitely took some getting used to. There's no crosshair, but hovering a block adds a flashing white overlay. We can also place blocks into the space we're occupying, a bug that remains until classic 009A and the first of many X-ray glitches. Holding down the R key causes the player to respawn in a random X and Z coordinate 10 blocks above world height every frame. In this version, this is the only way back after falling into the void, as the player doesn't take damage, but instead falls infinitely. The player Blue Crab demonstrated this by falling over 2 million blocks over the course of 5 real-life days. That's a feat I couldn't hope to compete with, though I have found myself jumping off many times to admire the interesting patterns that develop. While seeing the world from far away, or at an oblique angle, the grid of rock textures twist into impossible shapes. Moire, interestingly, if viewed from directly below, there's moments where we look like we're spiraling towards a massive wall of rock. At first blurry, but for a brief moment the math lines up just right, and the original texture appears at a completely different scale. Just as quickly as it emerges in the pattern and hurtles towards us, it recedes and vanishes. I was curious why this happens, and after consulting the game's source code and around the internet, I've come up with an incomplete but for now satisfying explanation. Feel free to check the references document for more. The key idea is the Nyquist theorem. To accurately represent a signal, a wave, a pattern, a texture, your sampling rate must be at least twice the signal's frequency. If you sample too slowly, you don't just lose detail, you get something worse than nothing, a false, low-frequency pattern called an alias. In Minecraft's case, the rock texture repeating across the ground is a high-frequency spatial signal, and your screen's pixels are the sampler. Up close, there are plenty of screen pixels per tile pixel, thus an accurate representation. But as the camera pulls back, the tiles shrink. Eventually, each pixel on a given tile occupies less than 1 screen pixel, falling well below the Nyquist limit, and the GPU starts inventing patterns that aren't there. Last thing of note is that this version included saving to a single level.dat file upon pressing enter or leaving the game. This only saves the world's data, or blocks, in a Y major byte array of size 2 to the 22, for 2 to the 8 times 2 to the 6 times 2 to the 8. We'll play around with this format in the third episode. On the other hand, the player has no data stored. We don't have any health, inventory, or position in what is essentially creative mode without flight, where our location is randomized every time we launch the game. Alright, nice. With all that out of the way, we can do a bit of a world tour here. So the first thing I did upon spawning in was mark out my original spawn and drew the S, which was meant to denote that this direction was south, as I'd seen somewhere that you spawn in south in these versions. I've since played around with the level.dat files and the code, and I'm starting to think that that's actually northwest because it's the 00 coordinate. But nonetheless, we'll find that out later, and perhaps it's an implication on the label over there. Next, I came to what I believe is the bottom left corner of the world, and I placed a label here with the version number. I plan to do this for every version before InfDev, so I can keep all the worlds apart and tell which version which generation is from. Way later, I came back through and added these trees, with some 14A and 14A08 trees dotted in for good measure. Anyways, after I was done with the label, I came back over here and dug out this staircase and started carving into the rock. The original idea was to use this perpetual grass layer as a sort of sod turf roof like you'd find in medieval Irish architecture. And for that I made a reference with this clochán like you'd find in County Kerry, these sort of beehive huts. And I think the cobblestone works pretty well. Obviously it's called rock in this version, but it works well for corbelling. But I was watching a lot of Pompeii documentaries at the time, and so I ended up leaning in more of a archaeological sort of Roman dig site. Now, it's not so shameless. I was recommended to add M to the front of Pompeii, but I added this E with an accent aigu, I guess in the lore to sort of connect the Roman and the Irish, I was thinking of sort of a Gallia Lugdunensis type external province, which might also explain why the roads are not perfect. This is sort of a, like Pompeii, built on the settlements of the Oscans and the Etruscans. This is sort of a settlement that was built on the Gauls, or whatever this lore group is. And that could perhaps explain why the Cardo Maximus and the Decumanus Maximus aren't perfectly straight, and they're sort of being cut off by this theater. One of the next things I worked on was this Greco-Roman inspired temple. I really like how this came out, even though it's only really visible up close because of the lighting engine. Over here is a bit of a parkour course that I made, and a demonstration of the different player movement. Now, when I made this parkour course, I really did it at the edge of what's possible, and so I only have a spliced run to show later where I combined the segments of me doing it. I didn't do it all in one go. Over here I have some different archway attempts that I was working on, and down here I just have a quarry. I had different plans with this. I was thinking of a layered city, but I don't know, I sort of left it for now. I'm not sure what I want to do with it. I guess you could just think of it as the quarry that they used to get all the stone for the aqueduct. On the other side of the temple, I have a sort of military barracks as I think of it, and then just some random structures back here. It's nothing special. I just laid out some more buildings that I might add in the future. And then there's a couple weird structures here with some, these almost look like, you'd put a pumpkin on top to make a stone golem or something. This was originally a bathhouse. I ended up expanding it. It's, large enough now. I sort of regretted the pool, and I consider this might be the Roman Forum. But at the same time, I also might expand this and move the theater, as I think that's sort of in the way. Like I said, the Cardo and the Decumanus Maximus are perhaps being not serviced by this theater. But if we come over to this side of the theater, we have a couple structures for the actors to prepare and perhaps keep their props, alongside this Leaning Tower of Pisa inspired tower that's perfectly centered on the world. As we get to the top of the tower here, you can see that lighting funkiness I talked about, and these 4 blocks are the center of the world. Pretty cool. I like this view. I think it's pretty neat. This is the top block of the world. Can't place anymore after this. And it gives a really good view of the aqueduct that I worked on. I was playing a bunch of Jackbox games with friends while I chipped away at this, and I think this is maybe the thing I'm most proud of in this world. This is the first domus I made. I suppose it's a reference. I saw in a Smarter Everyday video the Domus of the Wedi when he was touring Pompeii, and the 2 brothers had their chests, with opulent displays, and whereas their backyard perhaps had the bit of an inappropriate statue of Priapus, I rather did a Shaun of the Dead inspired backyard. That's what I was watching when I built this. So you have the backyard, the zombie, and well, I won't spoil. Now, whereas the House of the Wedi over there is sort of just a freestyle house that I imagine as wealthy occupants, this here is a much more accurate representation of a domus, ripped almost straight off the Wikipedia article. We have 4 outward-facing tabernae on the front exterior of the house, and as we go through the ostium here, we arrive at a beautiful atrium with a compluvium and an impluvium. As we continue through the house, we find a peristylium with a piscina. We can then move upstairs and see why this would be such prized real estate. A wonderful view of the forum, the temple, the tower, and what will eventually be an entertainment district, as we're going to have friends in the next episode, and we're going to need something to keep them entertained. And I like how the upstairs turned out up here. We've got some stone trees, like over in the forest by the label. After that, I came through here and built this insula, which is essentially a Roman apartment building. These also have tabernae on the bottom floor for some commercial activity. As we make our way up, we'll find ourselves in an open courtyard, though not all of the apartments are finished. I can give a couple examples, though. We can continue our way up with yet another staircase, though this floor and the roof above it are not finished. Lastly, we come to the theater. As you can surely tell, this project has been in the making for some time. Alongside watching many of these creators for years, I've put many hours of deliberate research into this series, so let me take a moment to thank and credit those who have come before me, and who are a great source of information for anyone trying to replicate this sort of playthrough. The Omni Archive, a community that has since 2017 recovered more than 80 previously missing versions of Minecraft. Now, the Golden Age players amongst you might find it strange to start before InfDev March 27th, which added the alpha format that seamlessly upgrades to all modern Minecraft versions, barring some potentially dangerous versions. That's what I thought too for many years, and it's where the next creator makes their entrance. Huge thanks to Zelinator, who has his own years-old polyworld, tremendous knowledge of old Minecraft, and who has created the conversion guide for pre-classic worlds through to InfDev. the Minecraft Discontinued Features Wiki, whose definition is as follows. A feature of Minecraft, whether through a bug or an intentional feature, that you could obtain in older versions of the game, and the ability to get this feature was at some point removed. This feature also must be able to be updated to a version where it is unobtainable without being lost. More specifically, thanks to Puffingfish for originally popularizing this idea many years ago. Thanks to Greffin, whose Minecraft Through the Ages I can't recommend enough, for its depth and the quality of the builds. Combining polyworld ideas with meticulous historical research, it already covers two of the main pillars which comprise this series. Another pillar being covered by Blue Crab's Minecraft series, which offers original technical analyses of early versions. Another thanks to Bugman CX, whose long-running Minecraft The Journey pairs version progression with charming cinematics, in yet another high-quality series I can't recommend enough. Lastly, a general thanks to Ethos Lab. I know, he claims another Minecraft YouTuber as their inspiration. But really, this series is a culmination of all the playstyles I've picked up over the years, and his Let's Play world has been a major influence in that. Further, his world betrays its age with envy-inspiring chunk borders and unobtainables that had originally made me wish for an older and older world. Throughout this series, I'll no doubt wax on about further inspirations, and rest assured I'll always try to credit where possible. For now though, thanks for the support, and I'll see you in the next episode, where we're going to update the world for the first time to RD132328. Take care.